Hello, folks. Welcome to the penultimate demonstration of today, the penultimate demonstration of the festival. Just to remind you that the next demonstration, slight change to the original scheduling, where we will also be having Gronya Watts joining Sergei Isipov on stage at 3:45. And just before we start with Sharon and Theodora, some exciting news in that they will be doing a blind bid auction on the Turkish dragon sculpture that came out of the kiln last night. Blind bid at reception, could go for anything, you never know. It's out on the chapel court now. It's up here for you to be able to see. And they'll announce the result at 4:25. I've had it measured because I know the first question I'm going to be asked is how can I get it home if I should win it. And it's 185 centimeters in all money. That's just over 6 foot. So I'm just thinking a standard passenger in a car, most cars could take it, or strap it to the roof rack. But I've got to say, in the past, don't sit here with your hands in your pockets thinking I'm never going to win it. I've seen people go home with quite extraordinary objects from these silent bids. So yeah, you might be able to take your very own Turkish dragon home with you at the end of today. So that will be, they're taking blind bids at reception, and the result will be announced at 4:25, just before the closing ceremony, and here at 4:30. So to kick us off, we'll just ask Theodora what she's going to demonstrate for us in this session, and then we'll ask Sharon.
So actually, so many things happening all these days. I didn't even manage to finish this piece, but never mind, because I can show you the next steps. After building, it dries, the bottom part is dry. I'm going to show you how I really make the bone adapt totally to the clay, because the clay has shrunk. What do I do to that? Then I'll show you very simply how I pass my Terra sigillata. And then I brought a fired piece with me, like a beginning of sculpture, which is adapted to this bone, which I've put in there. And I'm just going to glue it and show you how I put the beeswax, the colored beeswax, so that you have the perfect adaptation. I think that's about it.
Lovely, yeah. Thank you. And Sharon?
Sounds great, doesn't it? I wish I was in the audience watching. Anyway, I'm going to show you how I raw fire, so I don't bisque anything. These are the pieces some of the pieces I made yesterday, so this is the next step for me. So yesterday was very fast and furious. Now it's time to calm down. And I'm going to take inspiration from my sketchbooks about the land and about connectivity with people and place and choices, and I'm going to kind of trying to channel a bit of that energy into drawing or painting onto these pieces of sculpture. So using slips and oxides and whatnot.
So I'm much more technical. You still keep the poetry in the second stage.
And obviously we're really happy to take any questions from the audience. Just give us a chance to repeat them so that everybody can hear them before you answer them. Yeah, that would be great. I'll get out of the camera line. Okay.
So, my turn. So now, because it's still, it's eventually going to be destroyed because we won't be able to fire it here, but because it's soft on that side, I'll show you. So actually, for the ones who were not here yesterday, I just start with the bone, and I start building, bands on the bone. But because the clay shrinks, I have to adapt it once the clay is dry. So I think you can see, if I put it like that, you get a chance to see, right? So here it is, but there's many places I'm not happy with. I keep in mind that I don't fire high. So because the clay has enough grog, it won't shrink too much. I fire to 1,000, 1,060 at the most. So what I get now, I'll get after firing. Now, what I wet a little bit, doesn't need to be very wet, and I mix slurry from this clay with cellulose. I make paper clay, actually. Cellulose is this base for making paper. Now I've done so I take this kind of thick slurry, and I saturate it with cellulose until I get a soft clay consistency. And now I'll just go over. Now, normally I have it totally upside down, but I don't want to ruin the whole thing. So I put it on place, and I just really go
Would you like to
all
tell
the
us
way around.
Would you like to tell us what you're putting on?
Oh.
This is porcelain slip. So I'm using a stoneware clay body, which is a Y material. It's a pot clay's version of T material. So it's really lovely, heavily grogged clay, and it fires to like a milky kind of white. But I want it to be, can you hear me? Sorry. It's a stoneware grogged Y material, clay body in this instance. So I know that will give me a milky kind of white background. So I'm essentially painting onto the sculpture, but I want to, yeah. Is that better? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, over that way. So white clay body, it's milky white. This is porcelain slip. I know that the clay bodies will not fit together, and I want that to not work. I want the semi kind of cracks that I want it to kind of come apart away from the surface a little bit. The clay is not bone dry, but I can use bone dry surfaces, so I'm raw firing, and it acts as a backdrop, like a painting. So if you're an oil painter, you'd have a ground, and that's my version. So the porcelain will act as my white ground. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And then you build up with the colors.
Then I'm going to do midtones and dark tones. I'm going to draw into the surface using some really nice kind of sharp lines with a knife and feel my way around the body, being inspired by these marks that I've used on my trip to Norway, just in this instance, because it's an example of mark making, and using the clay as a surface to draw into, not onto, as a surface. So I want to work with the clay, not as a fired piece of clay that then glaze goes onto it. I want to go inside. Let's get some emotion in there. Yeah? Okay, let's do it. So clay goes on. A different paintbrush, a variety of paintbrushes. And it's softer. It's not Terra sigillata like Theodora is using. It's not that soft. It's just a gentler version. There we go. There's the ground. That'll do. That's that one. Then let's get some colours. So next, I've got my. Is that okay if I still talk? Yeah. Tell me to shut up if I need to. So I now got my lightest, my midtones or lightest midtones, and this is a local iron. So I live in Telford, which is the most geological condensed point of interest geologically, never found anywhere else in the world, which is really weird because I never knew that until COVID. So now I kind of on purpose go up and dig the clay, dig the local iron, and use it as a direct response to my feeling and my connection with my home, my chosen home. So that's quite important. This is lovely. It's really rich iron. It's gorgeous.
So are you using found materials,
Yep,
raw materials?
Yep. So raw found materials sometimes, not all the time, and it looks lovely when it just does this. I'm going to do it this way so you can see it. It's just really nice, just to kind of pick up. those brush marks. And I know that this will fire brown, or like a nice chestnutty brown if I leave it alone. But in a glaze, it will, if I use silicon carbide in a glaze, so I've got this one, that will give me a localized reduction against the clay surface, so it will produce bright reds as well, which gives me a different play. So I might
Do you not find the silicon carbide blisters the glaze?
I do sometimes. Sorry, I didn't get it.
Does it blister the glaze sometimes?
Yeah,
the silicon?
I love it.
What fun, huh?
Yeah, it's like there's no rules in sculpture. You can just do whatever you like. So that's the mid-tone as well in painting. Let me put some on there.
So Theodora, if you'd like to explain where you're at now.
So I don't know if you saw, so I just put this, actually, the interest with this paper clay is that it doesn't shrink, and also because it has all the little fiber, it takes a very long time to dry, and it can really adapt better to the clay that's underneath, even if it's almost dry. It is dry underneath. So I've done that. I let it dry a little bit more. Now, as in a hurry, I take out very carefully the bone, not to change what I've done. And then, when the piece is dry, I just go with Terra sigillata, which I make myself. Now, I don't know, maybe some people don't know what Terra sigillata is about. It's the flour of clay. You take the finest particles of clay so that there's no grain, so that it shines. It has a very nice, smooth finish. And what I like about it is that it really spreads wonderfully. You don't see a single trace of brush stroke. Now, usually when I use white clay, I use white Terra sigillata or broken white Terra sigillata. It's quite liquid, the Terra sigillata. Let me see. Now I have to mix it a little bit because. But it has to be clean because I don't want to put in any thick grain in it. You have to be very clean when you work with Terra sigillata, away from dust, away from. There you go. So, very simple. I just go, and usually I do 2 to 3 thin layers. Now, if I have white on white, it doesn't need to be so thick. But if I color my Terra sigillata, then I need at least 3 layers because I don't like to have the transparency. It makes it a bit dirty. I want to really cover the color that's underneath. Usually I use colored Terra sigillata on earthenware. That's mainly what I use, earthenware.
That would be white Terra sigillata going on to earthenware?
Earthenware, I color my Terra sigillata. Here you can see I have a few samples. Not always, but often I like this contrast between the tragic of the bone and the playfulness of the form and of the decoration. So I can very heavily decorate and have, yes, I like this interface, life and death together. Life is joyful, colorful. Death gives life, life gives death. So it's this game that I'm. This one is more embryonic, so it still hasn't taken colors, and it's still in becoming, let's say. Now, if I want to shine, here, when I do, the thing is that when you put colors in your Terra sigillata, either pigments, here it's a turquoise pigment. The pigment has thicker grain, so it loses its shininess. So it's more tricky to make it shine after. But what I do is that I just pass it with it becomes a bit dull. But after firing, I put some beeswax on, mixed with paraffin oil. To tell you exactly, it's 85 grams beeswax and 340 grams paraffin oil, which gives you a very nice paste. And you can see here, for instance, it's kind of a boring biscuit object, but with the paraffin, with the wax, you get this nice, becomes more intense. It's almost as if you glazed it, actually. And it smells good. That's the bonus. So that's what I will do when it's fired. But maybe I leave space to Sharon now.
No, it's lovely watching you actually. I'm like, oh, that looks great.
The colors you use seem very earthy as I look at them here.
Yeah.
You're connecting these men to the earth in which they grow out of.
So the thing is, for me, is that we love nature, don't we? We love the earth, and we love it. We go swimming, and we go climbing, we go walking, and we go the walk with smelly dog pepper up the woods and all that sort of stuff. So everything is kind of earthy, and that's where I find, and I think most of us know, we connect with our nature and the way that we live. Earth, wherever we are in the world, is very different looking. The ground is very different. So I want that to come into it, but then also, I like a bit of punk rock, a little bit of a little bit of and also a bit of psychology. So, looking at the shadow self, I wanted to put this on camera. Let's do this one instead of that one. So now I've got this is the process. So now I've got the medium tones, the light tones. This colours are medium as well. And then I'm going to put some dark on there, just to give it a bit of a drama, because, it is. Nature is drama as well, it's everything. So I'm going to highlight some of this and just make us feel a bit uneasy, even though it's really kind of a kind, impish kind of face. Is it really? That's the storytelling. So let's give it a little bit of a mask. Are you really? Is it? No, it isn't, is it, anymore? It's not kind anymore. It's more of a hidden surface.
Sharon, we have a question for you here from the audience. Is the iron mixed with anything other than water?
Nope.
Nope. Just water.
Too much faff in that one is for me. It's just, so it's black copper oxide, actually. This one wearing a glove.
So these are all neat oxides then?
Yeah, oxides, and then I haven't brought my glazes with me because I wasn't sure about health and safety. So the only danger thing I've got is the black iron oxide. But I have a dolomite glaze which I use, which is made up of really simple 3 things that I can never remember. Obviously, I writ it down. Here we go. So the dolomite glaze is made of dolomite. It's the dolomite. It's very simple.
What temperatures are you firing these at?
1260.
1260.
Electric kiln. Turn it on, give it over to the gods, and then open the kiln and go.
Electric kiln.
Yeah. I have children at home, so I can't use the lovely things that has been happening this weekend. So it's got to be quick for me, and then something that I can leave. Then I go home to the children, and then I come back, and then it's done. So it's easier. When the children are a bit older, maybe I can do some more wood-fired. Or experiment with some lovely kilns that have been happening this weekend. So yeah, I've got a bit of pink on here, some drama going on. I've got some, and that will do. So then what I'll do actually, the next step for me at home, not at home in my workshop, I would then play around with this oxide, with the silicon carbide mixed in with the dolomite glaze, which will create a bubble. It will pop and bubble, but it will provide a localized reduction, so that won't affect my elements of the kiln. So I can trap the star of the oxygen on the surface of the clay. So this will be on top of the kiln. When the kiln's on, force dry it, and then pop it in, and it'll be ready. Done.
What's your schedule like for that?
I fire slow, but I guess after hearing everybody, it's actually quite fast.
But it's raw. You don't miss
raw firing, yeah. So I start. So it's 75 degrees an hour up until 600, the magic number, or just after, and then full until 1260. leave it to soak for 5 minutes, and then hopefully, if the kiln will get to that, and then turn it off.
I think the Y material is probably more resistant to blowing
Probably.
up in those conditions than some.
But I use. I mean, I'm very lucky to have had the Y material this time round. It's really lovely to work with, isn't it?
I can't hear a thing of what you say.
Oh, can't you? I'll go over here.
That we have we can't hear sound across the
Yes.
stage.
Oh.
We can't hear you, and you can't hear us.
Okay.
So
The Y material is lovely to work with. The Y material that we're
Yes.
working with is gorgeous, isn't it?
Ah, that's thanks to Sharon. I arrived
Yeah.
here and I found the clay. I didn't know about pot clays, and I thought, oh, what am I going to get? And I guessed one, and I ordered one, and when I came, I realized it was not at all what I wanted. And fortunately, Sharon was just next to me, said, get what you want from me. And it's the best clay I've ever used. It's
Right.
absolutely fantastic for hand building, really. Thank you, Sharon.
It's the first time I've used it. It's the first time for me too. It's really nice.
It's the first time?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Oh.
So yeah, experiment with the clay. Find out what it does. If it cracks, go with it. You know, if you're making sculpture, that's the ethos of my work, really. Go with it.
think
Let
we've-
it go.
It's all
we've
right.
got a
all right.
time-sensitive gluing thing going over here, so we might need to get a camera on this. We need to.
Yeah. So let's go step by step.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I put this. I let everything dry. I put my Terra sigillata. If I want it more shiny, I just go with the soft plastic, and I don't look at the color. I look at the reflection, and it gets this most beautiful sheen. Now, of course, this you can't fire it very high because you lose the sheen after. Terra sigillata is more for low firing. 1060, 1100 is maximum, I would say. So there you go. I'm just doing samples. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I do that. I put it in the kiln. When it's fired and ready, I need to glue the bone back. So I have this, anybody can find that. It's this epoxy glue with two components, which is kind of thick. So I mix same quantity of the one, same quantity of the other. This is the part I hate because it's synthetic and it stinks. But, you can't always be...
Sticks.
It sticks very well. It sticks very well. It might break, but it won't. It will still stick.
Yeah.
So I go carefully everywhere. Of course, the piece and the bone must be dry and clean from any dust. Otherwise, it won't stick well.
I've got to say that yesterday I learned loads of top tips being on stage, but one of the best ones I'm taking away from me is your bucket of vermiculite to be able to stand things
Yes.
up.
You moved it from me. Never mind, I'll find it again. I'll find it. Yeah, actually, the thing is that never mind, I'll manage.
Never touch a thing on the demonstration.
I don't know if this is what I have around. I fiddle, I do with what I have around, and I was using stand, and it was so heavy every time to carry the bucket, and I said, what? And then I thought, I'm going to Wales, something light that I can use also to pack my piece. So, it was perfect for packing the piece, little bags everywhere, nice in cushions. I don't think it's ideal, because what happens is that when you press with the bone, it has a tendency to condense again. It expands mica that condense. Maybe perlite would be even better. I think perlite would be good. So here, I've put enough, and now I'm going to, and I'm always working with gravity. So now the thing is that it has to stand by itself. Not to fall like that. So I have to find the good direction of my bone. Let's see if we got it. Yeah, seems to be pretty good. It's standing perfectly. There we go. Have I put it right? Now the thing is that I don't know if you can see much of what I'm doing. Can you see? Okay, I'm going to clean all this. And the last step, now I don't know, I've never done it before, because normally you have to leave it dry for a few hours. And then the last touch is putting a little band of beeswax around there. So you get the perfect match. I'll try and see, because now it's going, if I fill with it too much, it might just fall apart. So, okay. I clean it well, I don't want it to show. And I don't know, shall we pass to Sharon? Or?
Yep, Sharon.
Oh, see.
There's a pause on the other side. Speak. Sharon,
Here.
Sorry.
you can speak.
Oh, can I? Oh, I don't want to. Makes a change. What am I doing?
Tell us about your links to geology, I think.
Okay, link to geology. For those of you who came to watch my talk, thank you. It was really great to be able to share that journey with everybody. For those of you who didn't, my connection with my home is very important. My home life wasn't great. It was very troubled at times. And I went outside to go and escape from the home life. And I found freedom in that earth. And so I made things like coffee, just making coffee, but not really coffee, it's just dirt. So the connection has a physiological effect on my body. And by that memory of the land where I live, it's in Telford. I talk about Telford a lot. I've always lived there. I'm reconnecting with myself. It makes me feel happy. And then when I'm using materials from the land, all of this stuff, sometimes it's synthetic and sometimes not. I'm kind of channeling that energy, maybe. Not necessarily here, because it's kind of almost forced, but when I'm in my studio, when I've got everything around me, I will really sit quietly with the piece and really think about what it is that it's telling me. I'll listen to those things, and I'll the land where I live. So it's very industrial. People go there for factory work, but it's plonked in the middle of a beautiful area of outstanding natural beauty. It's before you get to Wolverhampton. It's that kind of really hilly, very similar to Wales. It's beautiful. There's roaming deer. It's just a gorgeous place to live, and that's where I go to escape the parts of me that are quite dark inside, and they make me feel good. So that's the connection with the land. If that makes sense, all of that.
It's interesting that we have two artists again working, two women again working in. Earlier I was saying about Zoe and Halima and their work being so different, but yet they were both carvers, and yet the two of you work so much informed by the land in which you inhabit. And yet the work again is so contrasting.
When we met each other, we really felt something in common ground, even though we work so differently. She works fast, I work slow. She's into figurative, I'm more into abstract and, just giving hints, but not... I think we're women of the ground, of the earth, of the deep earth.
I think that's one of the wonderful asides that happens at the International Festival, is you put two cultures side by side and you explore the differences, but you also discover the similarities and the communal nature that comes through what we're doing together. It's fantastic.
The shared language of clay, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's what we do.
Oh, what am I doing? I keep getting distracted.
Do we have any questions at this point in time? Oh, yes, right here at the front. I think she's about to show us, but I'll ask the question. How do you color the beeswax that you put on the end of the structure to join them?
So, for instance, this one, either I try and find, I make the same color, And that can take me a lot of time because the different whites are very delicate to do. So if I want to work on the white ones, which are kind of yellowish, usually I try and get the Terra sigillata close to some colors of the bone. So I have a white one, I have a little yellow, and either I mix the two or I use only the yellow Terra sigillata, yellowish, let's say. And then for that one, the problem is that wax is kind of transparent. So even if you color it, you can see what's underneath shows through. So to make it white, I take titanium oxide. You can take any white powder, really, and that's what I have, so that's what I use, so titanium oxide, and you just work it in, work it in. And then you can add a little bit of ochre, you try and get it close. You can spend a lot of time trying to get it close. Here I chose to have a contrast, so I'm going to have, this one I did with chrome oxide, but you can use any pigment, ceramic or non-ceramic, because it's not going to be fired anymore. So here it's going to be tricky because I've never done that before, kind of try and put the wax before it might go away, but I do it really thin.
And this obviously gets softer as you're working it with the heat of
Yes, it's
your
hard
hand.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, at my place, because it's hot.
Yes, yours is much softer than Wales.
It's much softer than here. But it's amazingly resistant. I mean, I've had pieces standing around for years, 2 years, and it's perfect. It hasn't gone wrong, even in summer. When it's hot. Okay, you don't need to put it under the sun at 50 degrees, but otherwise, it's perfect.
We don't have.
You don't have that problem. Yes, because that's what's, somehow at the beginning I was saying, yes, but that's not ceramic, because I come from a school which is very purist, and you have to fire everything, and what is this wax? Come on, you have to find the way to do it, that it comes ready from the kiln without adding anything to it. And this wax, well, I'm done with all that. I don't care anymore, and I play around and fiddle. And when it pleases me, and I feel that there's a coherence with it, I use it.
And it's also a lot kinder to the environment than an awful lot of surfaces. It's a lot kinder to the environment. It's a sustainable material.
What, the wax?
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, there's a question. I think 2 questions.
Would you explain? You mean the wet to dry approach to? The glazing. The dolomite.
So this is the colour, and then that will give me the surface. And then because it's clay, we can play around with texture as well. So I have 2 glazes. One of them is tin glaze, which is an earthenware tin, just an earthenware tin glaze that you put your cobalt on and you have tinware. I'll put that on it to give it like real angriness. It's all like fizzing around, I guess, in the kiln, hurting and everything around it too. And then I will have the dolomite glaze, which is, I can't remember the materials, sorry about that. It's just 3 ingredients. Just have a look on glazy.org or something. And then that will give me the white. So that'll give me a creamy, matte, lovely white surface. And if I put it, so I'll leave some areas, like this one has not got anything on it. But if I want some drama from the real dense black copper oxide, I'll put the dolomite glaze just next to it. So then the copper, obviously in a glaze, it will go green, and then you'll just get this lovely little run because the dolomite will have, and then if I put something else on it, it's playing with textures as well as colours and materials, because I make sculpture. There's no rules. I like to, and if there's a crack, if it comes out all cracked, I'll be like, oh yeah, what should we do with that? Let's go with the crack as well on the surfaces, as long as it's not structurally and sound. Actually, that doesn't matter either to me. Yeah.
It's all brushed on, though. You don't
Brushed on.
spray it or
Not
dip it or anything like that.
because it needs to.
I did really want to bring the big head, but it was a bit heavy.
Well,
So I've got a
it'd be
big head
better.
that I made. I've
It'd
got
be
a couple of big
better.
heads in the place that we've been given to work with down on the
Whoops.
plaza, the place down by the lovely big kiln, you know.
All right.
And it's too heavy, but I would probably get some clay and then use that kind of action if it's a bigger surface, you know, and then maybe brushing. Depends on what energy it's giving me.
Cooler when we're two.
In terms of glazing, you brush it. You tend to brush it on.
Brush it
yeah.
it on. I have got a spray booth.
Yeah, just
But-
depends. Just
yeah.
depends. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds to, I mean, neat oxides often cause the glazes to crawl, you know, and spoil off. But it sounds like that's,
I want that.
you like that.
I like the unexpected. Let's just find out what it wants to do, go with it. If I don't like it, it goes in the slop bucket or in the bin.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. What was that first word? Sorry, I didn't hear it properly. Very interesting question about the use of beeswax, and have you ever thought of using propolis?
Propolis. If I use propolis, no, I use it actually to when I have a cold. I do my own, tincture with alcohol. Yeah. Country.
So they use it. So the bees use propolis as a sealing agent itself.
Ah,
They seal their frames. I did not know that. There you
I should
go.
try. I put first propolis and then the wax, you mean?
They use it
Or
to.
the other?
They use it to plug holes in the hive.
I'm trying to listen and repeat. So the lady over here was saying that the bees use propolis to seal the frames and to stop infection, so that it's actually, when it's used by the bees, it's incredibly strong. So she was suggesting that potentially Theodora could use propolis to bond the things together, to seal them, which is a neat
I'll
one.
try, but propolis is a bit more expensive maybe than that, I don't know. But it's natural. I should try. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, beekeeper. Befriend a beekeeper.
I have a friend.
We have a question in the middle here. Yeah.
In the very large piece that's in the exhibition upstairs, on Theodora's work, there's some red lines through the...
Ah.
I'm just wondering what that colour is.
I'll repeat the question. So
Yeah.
in the exhibition piece upstairs, where Theodora's got this beautiful piece, there are some red lines, and the question is, how have the red lines been created?
Okay, first of all, the red lines occurred because of the accident. Because anyway, I fired it once, and I tried to raku it once, and I didn't like it. And then I fired a second time, and I almost got burned because it was slippery, and it was 900 degrees, and it fell on me, and I took fire, and and anyway, it cracked. And at the beginning, I said, I'm going to discard this piece. But then, I've learned to let things sit in my workshop and not discard right away, because you don't see right away. You need time to see what you've done. And the more I was looking at it, the more it talked to me, and the more I said, no, this one, even the crack is interesting. All this that happened to it. So I religiously, like a chirurgien, how do you say that? I started mending it, and I took beeswax again, and I put red pigments, and it's so fine, so I really went very finely to get just in the cracks, which really enhanced the piece, I think, because it gave it even more this sense of organic, something that is in gestation in there somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, in ceramics, because intactness in ceramics gives things such value, and actually the beauty of celebrating the fact that it's a live thing, that it's fallen, that it's cracked, is something, you know, that should be
Well, that's what Japanese develop. Huh? They develop the imperfection to get closer to perfection. Yeah, you can never be perfect.
I think it's interesting, Sharon, that you're applying all this to leather-hard clay, and yet you don't seem to be losing the detail as you're scrubbing over it with one color after another. So you're adding water, it seems to be soaking in, but the next brushstroke doesn't seem to remove the ear or the, you know,
some of it's quite wet actually, and some of it's dry, bone dry at the top, you know, so it's kind of powdery. Usually I'd leave it to dry, like bone dry, and then it will absorb it, and then I'll scratch it through. Sometimes it'll be wet if I'm in a hurry.
Right.
Generally I'm in a hurry. Kind of get the gist of it.
You're at Aberystwyth and you've got 20 minutes.
20 minutes, go.
Yeah.
Slowing down, it's a reminder to slow down. Yeah. I think I've been doing this for about 20 years, and after 20 years, I think we all know this. We know our material, and we know if it's going to fall over. We know if it's overworked. We know when it needs to be, it's our friend. You know, we talk about our clay as our friend, and we need to honour the energy of it. And we know when to stop, because it tells us. So that one is telling me, stop now, because it's soaking through the clay too much. So I might have to go back to that, and then maybe just might just, you know, get up some marks or scrape it back a bit, you know, and get some energy lines in there, you know, stop it.
Do you sponge them off or rub them down when they're dry, or
yeah,
you know, that kind of thing?
Sometimes. It's quite hard to talk about it. I guess that's why we're here, to demonstrate. But it's about intuitively tuning in to the marks and the drawings that you know, using the dark, medium, and light tones and the textures, and knowing the clay. So it's to me, they're creatures, or they represent these, you know, this playful woodland kind of magical world that we all want to escape to sometimes, or be reminded of. Well, I do. Sometimes it's quite dark, and sometimes it's light. So it's about tuning into that energy and doing it intuitively. So I can't teach that. I think everybody has their own story to tell to their clay, and if you allow it to have a conversation back with you, and you learn to listen to it and not prod it too much, you know, and have your thing all over the time, you know, you get to know. You get to know, we all know, because we're lovers of clay, so we get to know that energy and we learn it. The first one's always the worst one. It will fall over or slop or die, you know, we'll go back in the slop bucket. And that's a learning experience. So the next time we might learn to listen a bit longer to it. So it's kind of an organic process.
That's lovely.
We have time for one last question. Oh, there we go. Yes, in the middle.
Theodora, could you say something about the tablets in front of you?
About?
These tablets.
Tablets.
If we can get a camera on these fellas, that would be great.
Actually, there are just a few samples that I brought for me so that you can see what kind of... it can be partly decorated or wholly decorated, it depends. But this is also part of my culture and my background, because I've been doing a lot of production work, throwing, and a lot of Byzantine decoration on the pots, and I'm very attracted to Islamic art also. So I'd like to kind of put hints of that in my more sculptural work. And I don't know if you can have a close-up, but here, if you want technique, this is red earthenware, and I've covered the whole thing with Terra sigillata colored with black and blue stain. And then it's called champ levé, this technique. So I engrave, and then whatever I want to become red, if I want to reveal what's underneath, I just take it off with the tip of my knife. It takes a long time. So this is one of the kinds. this is and after I put also some wax after firing. So all this I described to you before is on raw, bone dry. And what's interesting is to see the Terra sigillata with the colorings lose its sheen, and it's kind of dull like that. So the same thing, I don't know if you can see, yes, the same thing with wax. It's as if it was glazed. It gives it darkens it, but it gives it also light. Once I had covered a piece with a green, with a chrome Terra sigillata, and I found it very flat. I didn't like it. So I took my sandpaper and I started sanding it, and what's interesting is that all this has like ripples because of all these imprints, hand imprints that I leave. So wherever it's higher, the Terra sigillata goes away, and I get these patterns that I don't really control. The patterns appear according to the surface. So that I like also using. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, you can go endlessly with decoration. That's just a few of the tests. And also the last thing I wanted to say, sometimes, you know, my bones have suffered actually because they've been a long time in nature. So sometimes I like to enhance, and again, according to the color of the body, of the clay, I can enhance and put where it's kind of rough and here, for instance, a bit chipped off, I will put some wax, and I'll kind of, again, like in sugi somehow, you know, you kind of recreate the bone. And I like it because it even it even goes better with the piece after, if you have this reminder of color. And
it's lovely to think of something that was once living, having a new life in one of these works. And I think we are actually out of time.
Okay.
So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. And don't forget to put your blind bids in at reception if you're interested in taking that Turkish sculpture dragon home with you. And we'll see you back here for the final demonstration for Sergei and Gronya in 30 minutes.